News articles. So I was surprised to see this. I heard this on the news, that Russia was firing hypersonic missiles in Ukraine, and I thought that was ridiculous to waste them when you're just shooting static objects like power stations, but apparently they're not wasting them. Ukraine is using anti-missile defenses that are very successful at shooting down the missiles, and apparently these hypersonic missiles are effective at punching through that shield. And from what I've heard, the United States does not have hypersonic missiles yet, and I don't think we have any defense against them yet either. And they're concerned that not only Russia is going to have them, but North Korea is going to have them. So it probably is important for us to catch up in that technology. And that would explain why they're using them in Ukraine. They're currently going 4 times the speed of sound, and they supposedly can go up to 10 times the speed of sound. And at that speed, they're next to impossible to stop, apparently. I'll come back to this one. The other ones make a little more sense than that one. All right. So GitHub is going to make 2-factor authentication mandatory for active developers, but it's going to roll out slowly, and you're going to get like 45 days to comply. This is probably a very good idea. I talk about a lot of security problems, and it just seems like if 2-factor authentication is one of those really broad solutions for a whole lot of problems, phishing and a whole lot of problems, seems like pretty much everybody should just get used to using 2-factor authentication for anything that matters. And it'd make us all a whole lot safer. Oh, I'm seeing weird, I saw a weird red thing there, making it seem like my network connection was bad. Let me see if I can check here. Yeah, I'm on the City College network. Okay. I guess it's all right now. Okay, anyway, so Bitwarden is a password manager, and it has a feature which makes it possible to fill in a login in an iframe. So you have a main one here, and you can have another iframe down here, and it will fill in a password down there. They were told about this years ago, and they've refused to patch it, saying it's not a vulnerability, it's a necessary feature. Some login sites need it. So some vulnerability researchers are claiming this is a vulnerability and they should patch it. And so people are arguing whether this is really something they should patch or something they should leave alone. We'll see what happens. Anyway, okay, we don't need that. All right, this was pretty interesting. This malware infects and apparently Chinese government malware infects your SonicWall security appliances. See, is there a way you can show steps used last night in getting that network online? I need more information. I don't know what network you're talking about. You're talking about the computers in the classroom? Anyway, so this one's pretty cute. Yeah, the computers, that was pretty simple. I just happen to know we use statically configured passwords here, or statically configured IP addresses. So I just tried one so I could remember, and then when that didn't work, I tried a bunch of tricks involving sniffing the network, and they didn't work. So I just went and found a pile of old computers and found a label on one of them. Yeah, but ultimately I just found it written down somewhere. So the ultimate solution was nothing complicated. I was hoping I could get it by sniffing the network, but there were no computers actually active using any IP addresses, which normally there would be. Normally just sniffing the network would do, but not in this case. Anyway, so SonicWall, it'll infect your machine, and then it will persist across updates. And as far as I can tell, that was the interesting new feature. What it does, apparently, is it checks every 10 seconds for an update. And when an update becomes available, it copies it, mounts it, and then adds the malware to it. And then gets it ready for installation. So they don't make it entirely clear how it would trick you if you tried to update, but I guess it automatically updates and automatically copies itself, the malware, into every update. So that sounds pretty cool. They say it's not terribly complicated, but it works. You can't update your machine to patch it. So this is ChatGPT. The AI thing that can generate text has added an API, and I guess they're not charging for it, or they're not charging much because Discord has added it. So now you can have AI-generated text in your Discord chat and just ask it questions. So they have an example of somebody here. One of these people is apparently an AI, and I guess I can't zoom in because why would they let me zoom in? Maybe if I open the image in a new tab, might let me zoom in. Nope, looks like they're not going to let me zoom in. This tends to happen. All right, anyway, maybe that's going to work now. Nope, just won't let me zoom in. All right, anyway, they can ask questions, and one of the people in the chat is a bot, and you can ask it to answer questions and such. All right, anyway, so Google, years ago, got very upset because they decided that Facebook, social networking, was going to create a lot of data that was not accessible to Google to index. And they wanted to move into social networking. They thought that would be the way to move after chat. So they passed an edict that everybody's bonus at the entire company depended on getting a social network running. They were ordered to put social into everything. And so they rapidly rushed out 3 terrible social networks. One of them so terrible it led to a huge lawsuit. Google Buzz, Google Plus, and Google Wave. They were all disasters, and now they're doing the same thing again. They have now ordered that everybody has to build AI into everything within the next month or two to respond to ChatGPT. So they're rushing out, throwing it in everything in a hurry, repeating the same questionable plan. So we can expect a lot of rushed out, poorly designed Google AI products to be slammed into everything soon, probably to lead to hilarious disasters. And okay, now we're back to this, which is pretty much almost impossible to understand. I think I have another one that's easier. Oh, here's an easier one to understand. This is one I thought years ago. People often claim you can use quantum entanglement to send data faster than light. And when I studied this stuff, I was taught that you cannot. And this is a good article explaining what I was taught years ago. Quantum entanglement means if you generate a particle, if a single particle decays into two opposite particles, then they can move far apart. And you can measure them, and if you find one, say, with spin up, the other one has to have spin down, but there's no way to control it. So there is a sort of statistical correlation between two objects measured far apart, perhaps at the same time, but there's no way to send a message through that. So that's a simple quantum mechanical weirdness to understand. This is one that's next to impossible to understand. But this apparently led to the Nobel Prize last year. They found some experiments that prove that something we fundamentally think is true about the world is not true. And the interpretation I saw before is that there is no realism. There is not an objective state of affairs. There's one of these 3 things must be false, according to this experiment. Either there is not an objective reality, which I think means different observers see fundamentally different things, or there is no locality, so distant objects can interact through, this is what Einstein got mad about, spooky action at distance. 2 things affect each other even though there's no particle passing between them. Right now that is considered to be not possible. And the third thing, which they overlooked, which is what this author argues for, is that causality does not always go forward in time. And I must say, from what little I know of physics and pondering this for years, I think I like the third explanation best. You could argue that time doesn't even exist in the quantum state. I mean, time is a measure of entropy, which comes from large assemblies. So anyway, there are various, he said the simplest way to explain this is that something that happened in the future affected something in the past for a single particle. And it seems like that might well be true. I mean, we believe that having a fixed location and having a fixed momentum are things that are not true of single particles. We already know if you send single particles through 2 slits, the single particle will pass through both slits at the same time and interfere with itself. So we already know that particles do not match at all our intuition. And I don't see why they would have to be fixed in time or have things happen strictly in a linear fashion in time. It seems, they call this retrocausality. And that's the retrocausality property of particles would explain what they measured here. Anyway, nearly impossible to understand, but interesting if you're into deep quantum mechanics, which turns into almost mysticism. Anyway, that's all the news I've got.